Thanks very much. Let's get right to it. Tell us as briefly as possible the elevator pitch you gave for Vuclip back in 2008 was when it launched?
Yes, that's right.
Go ahead.
So Vuclip, we are a one-stop shop for consumers in emerging markets to be able to watch videos on their mobile devices. Right? Mobile is the only way for many of these consumers to access the internet and video, and we ensure that video will work on their devices, these low-cost smartphones, the sub-$60 Android devices, Java devices, feature phones. It'll work on the constrained networks that they typically are on, and it gives them the content that they care about in those markets.
So that was 2008, right?
Right.
We're now 2014. How large is the company, or how many users?
We are now 120 million monthly active users that come to Vuclip from all over the world, and they make it exciting for us to come to work every day, because when you influence the lives of 120 million users, you have a responsibility to make sure you keep adding value.
And where are those users? What are the biggest markets?
We have about 20 million users coming from India, another 25 million from Southeast Asia, a similar number from Middle East and LATAM, and now Africa is beginning to go up as well.
All right. So it's obvious why you're here. To put it in a nutshell, it's like what you've learned in those 6 years that have led to that success. So, I mean, what is it about designing a video site for those markets that proved substantially different from, let's say, if you were trying to build YouTube in 2008?
Right. So when we started 6 years back, YouTube had just been acquired by Google, the iPhone had just come out, and there were 19 mobile video companies funded. And everyone decided to go after the US market. We were the only company who decided to go after the emerging markets. And it was an interesting situation, because we were pitching this to VCs in the Bay Area. And the question we were typically asked was, so what's your iPhone strategy? Right? And we knew that was not the right VC for us.
But what was your answer?
So our answer was, we wanted to go after the emerging markets, because that's where the mobile was a must-have rather than a nice-to-have. And our approach was, we were going to take a browser-based approach to providing video, because almost all devices sold in the last 8 to 10 years have a browser on them and have a native media player. Right? And so we didn't go down the app approach until recently. And the reason was because for consumers in that part of the world, they're not as sophisticated as consumers here. If I asked most people in the audience here, or most people in the US, do you know what a data plan means, or what does 3G mean, or what does a megabyte mean? Chances are people would know that. But in that part of the world, you ask those type of questions and they have a blank look on their face. It's difficult to expect them to know this. But if you ask them, do you want to watch your favorite Bollywood actor on your phone? That they all understand. Right? And so we had to change the language. We had to get rid of all the friction points. And so we decided step number 1 was to take a browser-based approach, where all they needed to do was they would make a phone call, missed call, and they would get back an SMS. They're all used to making phone calls, and they're all used to getting SMSs. In the SMS was a link. They clicked on the link. It opened the browser directly to the video page, and they could watch the video. And that was a very low friction point. But if you ask them, first, please go download an app, they don't even know what you're talking about.
Actually, tell me about the process. So is that still how most users are using Vuclip?
So, it was 100% obviously for many years, and now it's gone to about 85-90% who still use it that way. The users who get sophisticated over time, because they've been using this long enough, we then upsell them on the app. And so it's a transition from being non-data users to experimenting with data and using video as the driver, and then saying, okay, now I understand what this is, now let me go download this app.
And sharing of individual videos is primarily over SMS?
Yes. It used to be over SMS, now it's changing. Twitter and Facebook are becoming the primary drivers of sharing.
Any of the other big messaging apps as well?
Not as yet. It's still primarily Twitter and then Facebook.
Why do you think that? Is it specific to the markets you're in?
I suppose so, because, for example, in the Middle East, in Indonesia, and in Latin America, it's almost all Twitter. It used to be BlackBerry Messenger, right? And as BlackBerry is phasing out, it's becoming Twitter. And maybe at some point it will end up being the messaging apps, but so far Twitter is pretty strong and Facebook is pretty strong.
Let's dwell on that for a second, because I would imagine if you're switching from BBM to Twitter as a distribution tool for videos, BBM largely one-to-one or at best one-to-a-few type of messaging. Obviously, Twitter at least has the potential to be far greater broadcasting video. Do you end up seeing that in the
Absolutely.
data?
So for example, until 6 months back, we had never set foot in the Middle East. And yet we had about 30 million users. And the reason we went from 0 to 30 without doing anything about it is because the early adopters watched videos on Vuclip, and then they shared them via Twitter to their follower base. And those followers watched the video, and at the end of the video, we had this post roll that said, for more such videos, go to Vuclip. And so they started becoming Vuclip users, and this started spreading. And over a 3-year period, we went from 0 to 30 million users without doing anything.
And now you're there.
And now
in earnest.
Yeah, now we've entered.
So you go back to 2008. I could imagine saying we're taking a web-only strategy, having felt like the right decision. It was still early up, but 2010 rolls around, 2012. I have to imagine you had second thoughts about whether, in fact, maybe iOS you could ignore, but whether Vuclip needed an Android app.
That's right. So about 2012 is when we realized maybe it's time, and so we started with a Java app actually first. Because
for what types of phones?
For the Nokia entry-level phones.
Got it.
And then we actually acquired a company that knew how to build those. And then we went after Android. And between Java and Android, you probably have 80 to 90% of that market. And so that's what we're going after with the apps.
And still no iOS app?
Not yet.
Right, we let WWDC take care of that. So you were just traveling in India last week. Tell me what the state of mobile networks are today, and if it's any better than when you were first getting into this in 2008.
The networks have gotten better, but at the same time, the number of consumers who are on the internet have also increased exponentially, and bandwidth is still constrained, and so it's 2.5G probably for 80-85% of the population, 3G for maybe 10-15% of the population, and even the 3G in many of these markets, it depends on the phase of the moon, right? If you're just at the right place, you'll get 3G and for a few seconds. And for video, you need to have a good connection for the entire duration of the video, otherwise it buffers. And so what we have figured out is, what the reality is, these networks will evolve, but they're not going to evolve anywhere at the rate that people expect them to evolve. And even if they do, the devices that are coming into the market have better and better screen resolutions. And so now your devices expect a HD video or a high definition video, and the networks aren't improving at that rate. So the load on the network is increasing more and more. So this problem is not getting better, it's getting worse.
And how the hell are you delivering video over a 2G network?
And so that's sort of our secret sauce. That's the platform we've built. Got it. Right?
I have to sign an NDA to hear the answer to that.
No, but the basic idea is, what we've learned is that the consumer on a feature phone or a low-cost smartphone on a 2G network who has never experienced video, has never experienced the internet, their expectations of quality are very different than the expectations that we have. Over here, if on my iPhone the video buffers for 3 seconds, I'm upset, right? But over there, I can actually watch video, that's wonderful, right? That's sort of the view. And what we've done is we've made a trade-off towards providing unbuffered video, even if it means a slightly lower quality, than maybe a wonderful quality, but it buffers every 5 seconds, right? And so that's the trade-off we have made, and we have decided that the experience has to differ based on the device and network you are on. You can't just have this one-size-fits-all, because that just doesn't work.
When you decided to go, that Vuclip was focused entirely on developing markets, to you, and I imagine even to the VCs you were talking to then, I'd be interested in how you see their perspective. Was that specifically about what you were just talking about? The tech focus of the startup, or did it have as much to do with the content?
Right. Actually, that's a very good question. When we started, we ourselves thought of ourselves as a tech company. But as we went through this journey over the last 6.5 years, we realized that for a consumer, the technology is meaningless. I mean, they don't care. All they care about is give me a great experience for my device, for my network, and talk to me in the language of content, right? And so over time, our DNA has changed to getting more and more content folks on board. People who understand the content world, who understand consumers' language. And in fact, recently we started creating our own content based on consumer behavior patterns in the different markets.
It sounds like the Netflix model
in
its own way. So the Bollywood musical clips that you were talking about, are those licensed clips? Yeah. What portion of videos on Vuclip are licensed by the company?
Right. So what we do is we break up our content into two big buckets. One bucket is all the user-generated content all over the world, right? The YouTubes of the web. And we make that available through their APIs, and it's free content to consumers. But then we also go license content from all the big content owners. And we make that content available to consumers in a paid model. It's a microtransaction, 2-3 cents a day. You get the clip of the day. You can sign up for a daily, weekly, monthly subscription. And we use carrier billing to ensure, because consumers in those parts of the world don't have credit cards. And so you have to charge them on their prepaid cards. And that's how we deliver that content.
With the transaction conducted over SMS or through
So it's either
phone?
WAP billing or SMS billing.
That's really interesting. Yeah. What countries is that working better in, and has it conversely, is it not taken off?
Actually, it's been one of the most important learnings for us is that in these markets, consumers don't like to pay for anything. So you have to give them if you created a pure premium only site, consumers don't even come to your site, right? So the model we decided to go after was a freemium model where we gave them all this free content from these UGC sites, and then based on their consumption patterns, we upsold them on this premium content that they were then willing to pay for, and we saw about a 5 to 10% upsell rate, which is pretty significant. And this is now live in India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. So we keep expanding into more and more markets.
And speaking of that, I don't know that you feel like you've saturated some markets like India. There's obviously still plenty of room to grow there. But where is Vuclip's next 100 million users? Where are they likely to be located?
I think even markets like India, there's a lot of room.
Sure.
But then Africa and Latin America is where we see most of our next phase of growth coming.
And are you there? Do you have a physical presence in
We're now
beginning
to go put people over there.
With the hope, I imagine, being that distribution is pretty similar to the early days of Vuclip, so SMS based.
So now it's evolving. Maybe it'll end up being more apps now.
Okay.
But yeah.
And an iOS app. We'll come back 5 years from now, and
no, by the next time I'm here, we'll be talking about an iOS app. But again, in those markets, devices are not subsidized.
No, I mean, I admire that restraint. That's sort of that's in a nutshell what I think shows how successful you've been.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.